What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Cleveland Pulse YouTube channel. I am your host, Justin Harold, and with me, as always, Jeff Santa. Today, we are bringing you guys some exciting Cleveland Browns news. In the last week, it's been pretty, in the last 24 hours at least, or 48 hours even, very interesting headlines. Starting off with the Browns not showing up for Cam Ward's pro day in terms of head coach and general manager Andrew Berry. They did send regional scouts and whatnot, but they were not in person for the in day pro day, where the Titans were and where other executives were. Uh, and then fast forward 24 hours, the Cleveland Browns are holding a private workout with owner Jimmy Haslam, GM Andrew Berry, and head coach Kevin Stefanski with Cam Ward. While also getting a fake real quick hour-long report of Dak Prescott potentially being traded to Cleveland really quickly, which was squashed almost immediately within the hour. And so now we sit here with another report also saying that the Browns are leaning towards Abdul Carter at the number two pick. Jeff, was that everything in that little wrap up right there? Was that about everything that I could cover?
I mean, if you could follow along with this story, you're like a syndicated journalist of the year award because it's a mess, you know. And here's the thing that people, the thing that kills me is like you can't say that it's all the pundits and analysts say this is a bad draft, whatever,
Hmm.
bad quarterback draft. Even a lot of people, I think if you ask them like, is this like a really good top five? I think some people would be like, no, it's really not. Even with Carter and Hunter and people like that, but
Yeah.
all the analysts are saying that. All the GMs are having to be like, oh yeah, these guys are so good. Like, I don't. What kills me, Justin, is I don't think we know what we're doing. And here's number
Yeah.
one. I know we don't know what we're doing. I actually know that. They could tell you, oh, we got a plan and best player available. And you could look at Andrew Berry's draft history, which is actually smart of the average age of players that he drafts and who may or may not be as likely to be selected with the second overall pick. What's killing me is I don't think Tennessee knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
I thought they did at Monday of this week. I would have been like, "Yep, Ward's going one. Can't, he's going first overall. Browns are in a mess behind them at two." Even
Yeah.
though at the end of the day, when we say they're in a mess, it still seems like it's pretty hard to mess it up. Even though my suggestion and my prediction is that we somehow are going to mess it up. I don't know how, but I don't know if Miami really wants him. So are they saying, "Oh, we're going to meet all the Cam Ward workouts"? Give us a good haul for the first overall pick. Will the
Yeah.
Browns do that? I don't know. Will it be concerning if they do that? I don't know. There's a lot of that's just the thing right now. It's a bunch of I don't knows.
Yeah, and the I don't knows that I think are really interesting also come with like, unfortunately, the news around other teams. So, like you said, Jeff, obviously a report coming out that the Titans are willing to take calls on the one pick still, even after the pro day and everything we've heard. The other part that is a little bit interesting is, of course, the only quarterbacks that are currently on this roster are number four and Kenny Pickett. So
Yep.
when you watch Russell Wilson, who was one of those guys that was heavily touted to go to the Browns, go to the Giants, who already signed Jameis Winston, they now have two quarterbacks there that, yeah, one's obviously going to be the starter. And, we know the Jabo story. He's a backup, a third stringer. That's fine in my mind. But what are they thinking? Do they think that
They have no idea. I
that
don't
both the quarterbacks are
Yep.
going to be off the board, or do they think that Cam is definitely gone between one and two, and everyone else is bailing out on Shador? Because that's
Uh,
what I'm hearing. That's the
honestly,
that's the
that's
one thing I'm hearing is like people are starting to
yep.
bang out on Shador, and that goes back to your point about like, hey, when we first started talking about the draft and we were, at that number two pick, I think I was one of those people who was just like, listen, I don't love being in this position because even like being number one, you're not 1,000% sure that like Cam was not. Listen, Cam didn't play every year at Miami. He was not the 4-year starter at Miami. He was a transfer student into Miami. He was a transfer student into Washington State. Um, and so, he's had a very tumultuous career. I like the guy. I think he's easily the most like one like if you're gonna get excited about the potential of any one of these guys, it's gonna be Ward, and for that matter, it's still like he's not Joe Burrow, he's not Andrew Luck, and those
Correct.
are guys that I'm like, if I have the number one pick in those drafts, I know for a fact that those guys are gonna eventually one day be who they were, and I just don't know that I can say that with Cam, and I think now that we're getting closer to the final date, that this is where you start to get the kind of insider trading with teams and scouts and everything. I think there's absolutely a little bit of guys feeding information into other facilities into like, hey, this is what we're thinking of this guy. This is what we're thinking of that guy. This is what we're thinking we're going to actually do at this pick. And I think again, another unfortunate matter of this draft and a matter of this regime that we're heading towards is that we're not really in a position to make a decision that is best for the team on the field, which
Mm,
is a awful thing to say. But after last season and everything that has gone on from the beginning of this past season to where we are right now with all the Miles Garrett stuff, with all the stadium stuff, there's a
true.
lot of outside factors that are going to come into play for the Browns here that I just don't know. That I'm like, I think it's very likely at this point that they trade for number one. The thing is, I don't think that the trade is going to be astronomic. I don't think it's one of those things where you're gonna like we're gonna look back and this is the thing. What do you escape with? Chicago had to trade two first rounds for the one pick 2 years ago or a year ago.
Yeah, but
I
none of these guys are Caleb Williams level prospect either.
and that being said, the what position did they move from to even get
That's
that
a good.
Carolina
They were
pick?
yeah they weren't at two, were they?
I don't think they were, and so that's my point. Like I think the reason why you're seeing a lot of this stuff is the Titans are probably way more willing to trade back, gather assets, and wait till next year and just kind of essentially tank. Like I think there are teams that are capable of doing that and being okay with that. I don't think the Browns are in that position. I don't think that this GM, this coach, and this owner are like, hey, you know what? Taking Abdul Carter, taking Travis Hunter, they fill positions of need, and of course, quarterback is a position of need. But I think where those two guys that I just listed are ranked in terms of just overall player base compared to Cam Ward, compared to Shador Sanders, they're much, much higher prospects. They're guys with much higher grades and whatnot. But this is Cleveland. And the number one thing that we've been constantly, constantly on about is the quarterback. So, of course, you get a regime that's failed at that position over and over and over and over again. We're 5 years into this, 6 years into this now, and they've had Baker, they've had Flacco, they've had Watson, they've had DTR. Like they've had Keenum, they've had Brissett. They've literally had so many different quarterbacks. We've seen some of it work, we've seen some of it not, and it's like, all right, what's the last thing in all of that and all those guys that I listed? What's the one thing missing? A top pick quarterback that you picked, that this regime picked. Baker was number
Yep.
one, yes, but he was not Barry's guy. He was not Stefanski's guy, clearly. All right, what did they do? They went and they took the biggest swing possible to go and get Deshaun. Guess what? It didn't work out. He's an older guy. He had issues off the field. He had issues on the field with injuries. So there's your, you know, essentially second franchise quarterback within this regime already. And then you had guys who came in and did their job serviceably, even more so than serviceably. But at the end of the day, when you look at this draft, I think ultimately what it's going to come down to is that these two guys, Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, are in the hot seat. I think Haslam is very much so hands-on in this now that we are getting a quarterback no matter what. And I think it's not going to be anything other than we need something to get people in the stands so that we're not just completely rudderless this entire season. And I think that's what it is, because you draft Carter, sorry, I don't think you're really putting 10,000 more seats in those stands, and
Yep.
I again, Hunter, same dealio. Don't think that's happening. So I don't know. As someone who has been the biggest advocate for not drafting a quarterback, I think that's where the lean is right now.
It's
And it's
amazing.
awful. It's
It's
awful.
it's amazing how all over the place it really is because there's so many things. Okay, right? So I don't, to me, I don't think it's ever been more difficult to be a general manager because of a couple of things, mostly the free flow of information on the internet. And
Mhm.
just like the average fan is so much smarter than like 20 years ago, where, you had, this is another aspect too that I feel like has kind of gone by the wayside. Bringing up the Giants and what they did earlier in the week, like you didn't have people 20 years ago like a Shadur Sanders and Dion, where everything they say in the media is going to be played on every single sports channel. It's going to be talked
Yeah.
about on every single social media outlet. Like, oh, when was that this week? This, oh, we're hoping for the Giants. Well, the Giants are like, all right, we'll just sign two quarterbacks, probably take themselves out of the quarterback race. They'd be stupid to draft a quarterback with their pick at this point. If you pay
Yeah.
Russell Wilson, if you pay Jameis Winston, it doesn't make any sense anymore. So they
Wait.
said that, and now I'm what like if you're in the situation room with the Browns, whoever your top executives are, Andrew Berry, even if has them sitting in there, the assistant GM, whatever her name is, like, what do you like? Is somebody sliding this across your desk? Like, oh, Dion just said they're hoping it's New York. How does that make you feel? Do you play it off like it doesn't matter? Do you play it off like you don't care? Is that going to be part of your decision making? And two, the average person is so smart, and like it's just stuff like this, Justin, where I'm sure you see this a lot on your feed and you see it on social media. It's just like, this is somebody that I, follow, and Cleveland Analytics, this guy who just he's a Cleveland fan and he does a lot of stuff regarding the NFL. I've really tried to avoid these Twitter draft wars last few weeks, blah, blah, blah. The Browns finished number 1 in pressure rate last year, 5th in pressure rate without blitzing, and 9th in quick pressure rate. Yet taking undersized Abdul Carter at 2 makes sense. When you have the shittiest offense in the NFL, 32nd EPA, 28th and 20th and 23 the last 2 years. Any moderate, decent edge across from Miles you can certainly be perfectly fine. So, like, yes, is Carter a good prospect? I think he is. I think the undersized thing with Carter is, statistically, is he small for an edge? Yes, he definitely is. I've talked to people who are diehard Penn State fans, and it might be recency bias, but I've talked to multiple people that have told me, the one person told me straight out that that coming out of Penn State, he is a better prospect than Micah Parsons was. Whatever that means for how his NFL career plays out, it's kind of up in the air. But I've had multiple people, compare him to Micah and say that he's actually, when he left in his last game at Penn State, he was actually a better NFL prospect than Micah Parsons. So I get all the arguments here. Could you whiff at a quarterback? Yes. Do you really need an edge? To be totally honest with you, I do. Would I be upset?
It's not the craziest concern right now.
It's not. But at the end of the day, are you like, if we pick Carter at 2, are you going to be upset? And on the other side of it, you have
Eagles are the reason you do that.
Correct. But the Eagles have, and I saw someone else say that, but they made a good rebuttal. The Eagles have a quarterback. When you have a quarterback, you could do that. And nobody was even putting Jalen Hurts. This is how amazing this regime and organization is, because you don't need. Remember when we traded for Watson? Mm-hmm. I felt like then the narrative was you need a top 3 or top 5 guy.
Yeah.
I don't even think it's that, like, crazily enough, the Eagles just showed it's kind of not that. Was Hurts really good in the Super Bowl and good in the playoffs? Absolutely. But preseason last year did anybody have Jalen Hurts in their top 3 quarterback discussion? I certainly didn't.
I don't know that you still have him there.
That's what I'm saying.
Team rushed for more than they threw the ball last year.
You just need someone who could move the ball down the field. Yeah, and just doesn't do stupid shit. But at the end of the day, like Hunter, all right, he has off-field issues. I know people want to downplay that. I probably put more stock into that than other people, but you literally saw him during the Heisman and everything, where he's going to have off-field distractions, or at least, his track record shows that he could. Sanders, you're getting Dion with the thing, you're getting the media outlet.
100%.
I think the Sanders pick is dumb because I just don't want to. This team
screams Cleveland.
it literally does scream Cleveland. But this team has, out of the last 3 seasons, no team has been in the headlines more than the Cleveland Browns. I am so sick and tired of that. Sanders could be a really good NFL quarterback. I'm not
Yeah.
even making commentary on him as an athlete, as a player, as a quarterback. I don't want to I don't want to be at the gym and every other TV, ESPN, whatever it is just, oh, Cleveland. Oh, Dion said that Stefanski isn't using his son right. Like, come on,
Right.
guys. Like I get it. You want the quarterback and you want the ego and the flashy and the ooh with the watches. Like, all right, that's attractive. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is attractive because you want the swagger in your town. But it's so overblown. I wanted to stay out of the media all off season. We couldn't even do that with Miles. It's been a mess.
Right.
I think at this point, I think they trade up to 1, which is, I don't know what that package looks like, or they sit there and take Carter.
I think when you go through it the way that you just did, Jeff, Carter, great prospect, potential potential Micah uh prospect, but not necessarily something that like is the number one concern, not even like a number two or number three concern on this team right now. Also, like, who knows? His injury thing, that's something to keep an eye on. You go to Hunter and you have the off-field issues. I have the on-field issues where it's like, is he even is he Jamar Chase in this draft? No. Is he Denzel Ward in this draft? No. So, am I really going to
You're
draft a
gonna
player
misuse them.
that I don't know if we're gonna be able to properly use him or even get like a top two worth out of him, and that's my issue with him there. And then Sanders is very much similar to you, Jeff. I mean,
And my thing with that
whether
too,
he want
Justin,
like
is I think if you draft Hunter, you have a lot of internal and external pressure to play him as a wide receiver, and I don't know if that makes sense because you're basically saying, all right, we took our name out of the race for a young quarterback who could elevate the roster. Do you want, if you have Travis Hunter on the defensive side of the ball only,
mhm,
and you have Kenny Pickett, God forbid, or
mm,
our preferred candidate if you don't go quarterback at 2, Carson Wentz. Because here's the thing, if you put Hunter as a defensive back and they go out the first 3 weeks and we were averaging 15, 16 points like we did last year, they're going to be like, oh, why is Travis Hunter on the deep? I'll be asking the same question. If
yeah,
you have 0 wide receiver touchdowns through the first 8 or 12 quarters of the season and Hunter's standing there clamping people on defense, people are going to be like, what are we doing here?
yeah. And for Sanders, like again, I think Dion absolutely no matter again, to your point, he can be a fantastic quarterback. I don't believe the conference he played in allows that to
Nope.
be very projectable. I don't think that he ever went up against competition in those years that was super comparable to what he would have faced in somewhere like the Big Ten or the SEC. And where a lot of times these big name quarterbacks do come out of. And so um I just personally, I didn't have a huge high grade on either one of him or Ward. I just have more like if there's a ceiling for someone that's going to be astronomically high, it's probably Ward. But the floor and the in between, like again, problem for Browns fans that Justin Harold is going to always be the biggest proponent of is we draft a kid. I'm telling you guys not to play him for a year. For a year. And that's gonna upset
It's
people
always been
because we're
your
gonna
thing.
just be like, why are we doing this? Look at Jaden Daniels, blah 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 blah.
Jaden Daniels is an
Under
anomaly, though.
I understand. And he was also in a draft where the quarterback class was astronomical again. Like again, you got three quarterbacks who led their or not sorry, you got two quarterbacks who weren't the number one pick that led their teams to
Yep. Studs.
playoffs and really good seasons. And Caleb Williams, who was again the top prospect at that time and went to the Chicago Bears. So that tells you that. But regardless, if we traded up, I 100% know that it's for Ward. That's clear cut. I think no
Has
one
to
is
be.
arguing with you there, and that's the only reason why you're getting excited about any move that happens prior to the draft or during draft day is like, all right, they know and think that they're not going to get an opportunity to get a quarterback that's going to be able to make any significant movement on this team. They have to go and get Ward. They're going to go and, do what Justin says and sit him for at least, more likely than not to the bye week, and then depending on where they are, because I've been on. I don't. Maybe I haven't been on record with this Carson Wentz statement yet, but you sign Carson Wentz to this team, and you draft, and you go through training camp, and you can try to keep the noise to a minimum. I really do truly believe that Carson Wentz could have you be a pretty like medium
I think Carson
team.
Wentz could get you 7 wins.
I believe so. I think he could have you at 500 potential, bye week. But at that point, are people going to start screaming for, Ward to get his chance and what's going on with the rest of the team? So it's all a mess. I think that's what you just essentially summed this up to is the number two pick is a mess. You'd probably want the number one pick, and you're probably hoping that the Browns, make that move so that you have clarity because at this point, there is none.
Or the Giants just have absolutely lost their mind. They call you
And
for
they
the
trade
second
up to
overall,
one.
or yeah, they call you, or you. If you have a chance, like here's the thing: if you have a chance to move back, get assets, and still get a Carter or a Hunter,
Man, that's gonna be tough.
I don't know how you pass that up. But here's another thing too. I don't think a lot of people are thinking about. Oh well, you got to look at the track record of the people we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Let's take how much success has Kevin Stefanski had with highly touted quarterback prospects? I would say maybe a little bit, but not as much as he should. Baker, people forget Baker was, first overall pick. Maybe people don't forget, but I, you know, Baker was a very highly touted NFL prospect coming out of college.
He had
You
his
know,
hands on Kirk at one point.
Kirk, okay, whatever. That's, Kirk is kind of like a journeyman though. Like, he's
Well, and
had
we're
good
and we're talking
stops for
about his
people.
success stories. Kirk is probably his best one.
Absolutely, but you have Kirk, but I don't think Kirk was like Kirk is not a I don't
Deshaun
even
Watson, Baker
no,
Mayfield
exactly,
level
exactly, exactly.
talent.
So if you give, Deshaun was a guy in his prime was highly touted. It was going to be him and Mahomes for a decade to come, battling it out in the AFC. Okay, Baker first overall, Heisman. If you give this guy Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders, well, there's not a good runway of this is going to go great. You actually might have a better opportunity of going with a Carson Wentz, going with a Kenny Pickett, which is crazy. I can't believe I'm even saying that, or going with like a Will Howard in the fourth round, or a Jackson Dart, or somebody who's a little bit more slept on, and then bolstering up the offense. My thing is though, if you take Carter at 2, and I know you're going to disagree with this, maybe lightly. If you take Carter at 2, the rest of your draft has to be offensive players. You got to go. I think you got to go tackle in the second round, tackle or wide receiver. I think you got to draft the running back, and I think I don't know. Those are my things right there. Another tight end. You got to go offense the rest of the way.
I think there's a very good possibility tight ends a higher pick than people think. I would go so like if Carter is the pick at 2,
The
and here's
offense is
again,
terrible.
just remember the reason why you would go Carter pick in the line of thinking that Jeff just went down is that why wouldn't you think about Carson Wentz and think about Jalen Hurts? Carson Wentz was on that team when they drafted Jalen Hurts in like the third, fourth round,
Carson Wentz
and
has that MVP. He's been in he's been in those conversations. I know it's a long time ago, but it's not like he's not
and he's no
he's
Joe
not
Flacco.
Jameis.
He's no Joe Flacco. He's not going to give the dude that's been behind him flack for being the guy that's behind him. Probably going to take his job in the future.
Yep.
But draft Carter and then hell, reach with that second, third round pick and take Howard and sit him like they did with Wentz and Hurts. And
See,
I mean
I'd be against
listen,
that
in the
personally.
grand scheme of things, you got Andrew Berry from the Eagles, and you're like looking at the Eagles and you're like,
The Eagles
wow,
have only been up since he's left, and the Browns they've been okay. Like people are, like Andrew Berry has a playoff
they
win
had
under
one of
his
their
belt.
best. They've been to the playoffs twice
Correct.
in 5 years with Andrew Berry than they did in 2 decades.
But even Andrew Berry's, I don't know what they were, but I'm pretty sure they were like peers or acquaintances. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah goes to Vikings. They're contending for the 1 seed last year. Like AB, you got to figure it out, bro.
Yeah, I mean, again, he's taken some very aggressive swings at the quarterback position, which unfortunate, but I think this is what it's boiling down to. I think it's boiling down to that they want a quarterback and they're trying to make the decision of, all right, is it Ward? And if it's not Ward, then they're going to have to do some research on some of these back tier guys because I don't think they're going to go Sanders. No.
Carter
Two
Hunter.
is a mess. I
Yep.
hate number two.
It's bad. And I thought 2 was going to be like, I mean, it's definitely been fun to talk about, but who knows what they're going to do.
Yeah, I think you get a guy like Justin Fields earlier in the offseason. I mean,
Yep.
you're not getting. I don't think you're paying Darnold, and I don't think you're paying. Uh,
Rodgers or anybody like that.
yeah,
Wilson,
I don't
even
know.
Wilson, if they would have signed Wilson to that contract, I would have been on here with popping blood vessels. If we would have paid Russell Wilson $10 million,
Yeah,
I'm so glad they didn't do that.
yeah. So, but Jeff, that all being said, you got anything left?
Nope,
No.
nothing.
Alrighty, you guys. Well, with all that being said, number two pick currently owned by the Cleveland Browns, a month away from the draft. Do we think the Browns are going to stay at number two, or are they going to make the move up to number one to secure the quarterback position, or are they going to stay put? Are we going to be in the dark all the way until we are on the clock at number two with whoever's on the board at that point? Leave a comment, leave a like, leave hit the bell notification, subscribe, and with that all being said, we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.